working hard, boys. We're working hard every shift, every shift.
And Berenson, the Red Baron, was right there to raise the temperature of Gump Worsley. The score was tied.
If that trade on November 29, 1967 with the Rangers, what do you remember about that day, where you were, how you were told?
Well, we talked a little bit about that earlier, and I was playing for the Rangers, and I wasn't playing much. And of course, I didn't realize that I was trade bait. If Rattel played well, then I probably wouldn't stay with the Rangers. So anyway, we played the Blues. And the Blues, it was their first year. And they had just made the announcement that Scotty Bowman was going to take over as coach from, up until then, I think Lynn Patrick and Scotty were behind the bench. But Lynn wanted to move upstairs and Scotty wanted to be the coach. And so Scotty coached that game. And I played as well as I'd played and more than I'd ever played in New York. And had a good game. But after the game, we had the day off the next day. This was a Sunday. We had the Monday off. And Rod Sealing and I had planned to go deer hunting the next day. And so we took off right after the game with our sleeping bags and our guns and so on. And we went up in the Catskill Mountains and we were hunting the next day. And there were no cell phones or anything in those days. So somehow someone got the word to us that Emil Francis was trying to get a hold of me. And so, well, we thought, I wonder what that's all about. So we were driving home and we started thinking about it, and I realized Scotty Bowman was my coach in Hull, Ottawa with the Montreal organization, and I played my best hockey for him. And Frank Mario was the director of player personnel, and I played junior hockey for Frank. And so the more we talked about that on the way home, Sealing and I, we figured out that I'd been traded to St. Louis. And sure enough, when I got back, I called Emil, and he told me, you're going to St. Louis. I couldn't wait. And it was the best thing. And I told my wife that we're going to St. Louis, and of course she had never been to St. Louis. And it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Scotty said to me, he said, you know, you've always wanted a chance. You're going to get a chance. And it was as simple as that. I don't know if he even talked to me after that, but he played me and he knew how to play me and who to play me with and against and so on. I mean, he made that team go, and I was just one of a number of players that couldn't wait to get a chance to prove myself in the NHL. Never really, we didn't have a lot of set lines like year in and year out, but I had moments when I played with Jimmy Roberts and Bill McCreary or Timmy Ecclestone and Ab McDonald, and I played with an assortment of players. Jerry Melnick at one point, Jim, I'm not sure if it was McKinney, but we had a number of guys that I clicked with, but our lines were not as stable as maybe lines are today. So I just made the most of whoever I played with and whatever role I had. The big thing was to play. You know, today they keep track of ice times. I don't think they did in those days, but when I became a coach, I realized you can't play a good player 8 minutes a game and expect him to be a good player. And Scotty knew that. It was great. I mean, we all were there, it seemed, with the same attitude. Like for Glenn, it was, you know, this is the last stop in my career and I'm going to make it a good one. And for Ab McDonald, he'd played on Stanley Cup teams, on 2 or 3 different teams. And Jimmy Roberts had played in Montreal, and I'd played with Jimmy, and I knew the kind of player he was. I'd played a little bit against Bob Plager, and I knew his reputation. And Barclay, I didn't know much about, but I'd seen him, I knew him in the Ranger training camp. But it turns out we all just fit like a glove, like the players fit in. Everybody, as I said earlier, we took ownership of the team. And we felt bad. If we lost a game, we felt bad for the owner, and we felt bad for the fans. And then we realized we got to be better, and Scotty was in tune with that, and it was a great feeling at that. I don't know if it's like that anymore. You know, the feeling was in those days that, you know, the Blues were an upstart expansion team. They weren't expected to win, and we had to try and overcome that nobody thought we could win. And we had moments, we hit goal posts, we had overtime games, we had last-minute goal games against it just wasn't happening. But our team did everything they could, and we just couldn't get over that, whether it was confidence. I mean, sometimes the best team doesn't win. But in those final Stanley Cup playoff games, the best teams were winning. We had to upset somebody, and we couldn't quite do it. We didn't like the Flyers. In fact, I think it was the strength of the Blues. And I think of Ed Snyder, the original owner there, he admitted that. They hated St. Louis so much, and they were very respectful of the toughness that St. Louis had, and we had all kinds of bench-clearing brawls against them and so on.
Oh, Plager, right up over the fence. Some of the fans got into it. Mark Plager is up there.
They got their team loaded with tougher players, and they became the Broad Street Bullies, and they won 2 Stanley Cups. And they will tell you behind closed doors that it was St. Louis that made them tougher. So it was the Plagers and Picard and the Blues toughness that made Philly what they were in those next few years. Well, I had a meeting with Sid Solomon out at his farm, and he wanted me to step down. And as much as I loved St. Louis, I just didn't think it was the right thing for me to do, to give up on the Players Association and what we were trying to do in terms of getting a better pension and so on and so forth. And I said, I want to do what's best for the game and what's best for the players and what's best for the owners. And walking away from it, you're going to get someone that doesn't have those priorities. And I think it'll be worse. So I don't want to step down at this point. And it wasn't long after that I was traded to Detroit.
Berenson bouncing it against Goldsworthy. Right in front, delivered. He scores! Ecclestone gave it to
We were getting ready for New Year's Eve. We had a game that night, and I got a call early in the morning from Del Vecchio, and he said, "We've traded you back to St. Louis, and so you won't be playing tonight." So we had the game, and then, but I had planned, I was one of the captains, and I had planned to have a team party after the game at my house. And so we said, yeah, we're still going to have the party. So all the players came over after the game, including Phil Roberto. He was already in town. I don't remember if he played in the game or not, but he came over to the party, and we kind of chuckled about it. And the next day I left for St. Louis. I was looking forward to it. I knew that my role would be different. You know, I was going back to St. Louis. Unger was established now in St. Louis, and they had a good group and a lot of young players that I didn't know. So I had to acclimate myself back in. It wasn't like the old days, but it was good. And it's all these young guys start coming up, and so I really enjoyed that with the Federicos and Sutters and so on. So it was a good time, even though I wasn't leading the team in scoring and so on. No, it was fine. Ungie was good with me. I was nearly 10 years older, but he was an up-and-coming star, and good for him and good for St. Louis. And you know, my best years were in St. Louis, and I was happy to come back and do my best to keep the franchise going and keep the team going, and maybe add a little bit of Blues experience. You know, as an older player, you still think you can play and you want to play, but sometimes your organization doesn't think it's a good fit anymore, and I don't blame them. And I was fine with it, but I didn't know at the time. I didn't know that game would be my last game for sure. I thought it might be, but I didn't know it was. Barkley now had become coach, and Bark wanted me to stay and help him and be an assistant coach. I never wanted to be a coach, but and I thought it would be a good way of, well, I can keep my family here. We had 4 kids then, and so why not? And try and help. I know the players, I know the team, and I know their history, and I hope we can get it going. And I really loved Barkley. We were great friends and great teammates. And then it turned out Bark got sick, and Emil called me and said, "You're going to have to take over the team and see how they do." And he gave me 3 games. He said, "I'll let you coach the next 3 games, and We'll see how they do. And our team did well. They rallied around Bark's sickness, and they all loved Bark too. And we got going again. And so then it was a little over a year later, and Bark was feeling better, and so he came back, and he was my assistant coach. And we got along great. And we had a good friendship and a good history, and we both loved the Blues. So.
Here's a feed to Fedorko, over the line, drop pass, Bourgeois, slap shot, they score! Fedorko on a deflection! Blues take the lead!
No question. Fedorko was special with the puck, and he could score, he made plays, he was a really good centerman and just needed to grow and figure out, you know, how he could do well at the next level. But I could see it right away. This kid is special.
Bernie again watched by Long, who gives him no room. Bashan trying to make the play, losing to Chapman. Blair to center, Fedorko in front. Out comes Bashan. The shot scores! What a play as Fedorko waited and waited.
And he and Sutter were just a great combination. The two of them together were better than they were individually. And Sutter had the competitiveness of Barclay Plager and the toughness. And he would go to the hard areas in front of the net, and Bernie would get him the puck.
The puck goes rear of the goal. Fedorko in front. Short side, score! Big play there for St. Louis as Sutter gets the first goal ever at the Joe Louis Sports Arena.
And they could play against anybody, and so we had different right wingers for them at different times. Babbage was the first real power winger that they had. So Sutter, Babbage, and Fedorko was as good as most lines in the NHL. At that point, I'm coaching. I don't get to see the prospects, but Liud ended up in the WHA, and so when our season was over the previous year, Emil sent me out to scout our prospects. And every time I saw Liud, he was the first star of the game. And I think he was playing for Indianapolis, I'm not sure. But he was amazing. And so when we took him to camp next year, he came in and he didn't play much. And I remember talking to him about, Mike, just keep working, doing what you're doing, and you'll get your chance. And he said to me, he said, Coach, he said, don't worry about me. He said, when I get in there, you won't get me out. And that's exactly what happened. Once he got in, he took over as the #1 goalie, and the rest is history.
Comes up with the puck, but couldn't clear it. Now Dion, a shot, rebound! Oh, and Liuk stopped it from close in. Now the King center. Here's Larry Murphy, hit the goal post! Murphy hit the goal post, another shot! And Liuk stops that. Now Brownside.
I like playing better, yeah. Now coaching is gratifying, and watching the players develop and recruiting players, and you know, I can't say I dislike coaching, but I really like playing. You know, the Stanley Cup has eluded St. Louis for a long time, and I was so gratified when the team won the Stanley Cup here a few years ago, and I watched every game, and from afar, and just loved it. So it was a lot of history, and a lot of the Blues felt the same way, the older guys.
The St. Louis Blues are the Stanley Cup champions for the first time in franchise history.
Is there one memory that when you think of St. Louis that sticks out in your mind?
Well, it just seems like it was a good fit. Like you feel like you belong. It's like part of your family's here, and part of your history is here. And so even though I don't live in St. Louis, whenever we come back, it's special. I've got a laundry list of people to call and to try and visit and see, and it's like, our youngest son was born here. I took my wife into the hospital on the way to the game, and she was going to deliver. In those days, you know, you never missed a game or a practice because your wife was having a baby. And so we were playing Chicago that night, and I couldn't wait to find out after the game what happened. And so the hospital had called, and they said, your wife, they left a message that your wife had a baby during the game. So I got to the hospital, and the doctor said, you won't believe what happened. He said, the minute she delivered Rusty, you scored a goal against Chicago. And they were more excited about that than they were about the health of the baby and so on. Well, it is what it is. You know, could it have been better? Yeah, you always say, you never look back and say I was great. You look back and say, geez, I could have been a lot better. And that's kind of the hockey mindset, I guess, that most players will tell you. I didn't know the Blues were going to have their own Hockey Hall of Fame. I don't know how many teams in the NHL have their own Hockey Hall of Fame, but nevertheless, to be chosen and remembered and included in this group, it's more than just me. It's all the guys I played with in St. Louis, and some that are gone now, some that couldn't, like Glenn Hall couldn't make it. He was a key player on those early teams. It was so good to have Scotty Bowman here. He was the coach that really kept everything going in the right direction, and we wouldn't have been the team we were without Scotty Bowman. And it was about the Solomons, who literally put their money on the line. They were inexperienced sports team owners, but they were great people, and they bought the team when they had the expansion back in '66, '67. And we all felt ownership. We took ownership of the team. It was the first ever St. Louis Blues team, and we couldn't wait to make it successful. And we had no idea that the fans were going to embrace us and accept us and support us the way they did. And it just became a bit of a sports love affair between the players and the team and the fans in the city of St. Louis. So to be remembered, when you think about all those things and the number of players that have come through the Blues team over the years, and this is just the beginning of the Blues Hockey Hall of Fame, but I'm thrilled to death to be a part of it.